When you say not transitory and you cycle inflation, I'm wondering how long you think that drags on. Is it permanent? I mean, when you give somebody a raise, it's not like you're going to take that raise back in a year. When you're selling a sandwich for $12 now, it's not like you're going to sell that sandwich for $11.50 6 months down the line. So when we see these costs go up, how long before we might see some pressure ease off of those inflationary gauges?
So we will see all these second round effects you talked about. People asking for higher wages in order to maintain their purchasing power. Companies raising prices in order to maintain their margins. And it will go on well into next year. And then
for our Texas families, Build Back Better delivers where state Republicans failed. From child care, health care, educational opportunities from pre-K to post-grad, and the first responsive steps to the climate crisis. As healthcare subcommittee chair, I of course have been mostly involved with the healthcare matters, including my number one priority to close the Medicaid coverage gap. For the first time since becoming law well over a decade ago, the Affordable Care Act's promise will be fulfilled for more than 2 million Texans who were left out and left behind because first Rick Perry and then Greg Abbott put their political ambition and ideological entrenchment ahead of the needs of our neighbors, our most vulnerable neighbors who are denied access to federally financed health care. Today's Build Back Better Act includes the provisions for which I have fought relentlessly, together with tremendous Texas advocates, including the Children's Defense Fund, Every Texan, Texans Care for Children, and Cover Texas Now. Finally, our Texas neighbors can gain access to a family physician, essential medicines, and the health and economic security that comes with comprehensive health coverage. For a population that is too often the first on the chopping block in Texas, Build Back Better finally delivers. This year, the Republican-controlled Texas legislature once again rejected Medicaid expansion. And despite so many unnecessary maternal deaths in Texas, they refused to even extend Medicaid postpartum coverage for a full year. Republicans also rejected a bill to ensure children relying on Medicaid health care are not kicked off and denied any coverage at the state's whim simply because a family member missed a random paperwork deadline in the middle of the year. Righting these wrongs, I fought successfully for provisions that are included in this Build Back Better Act to provide year-long postpartum coverage and year-long continuous Medicaid and CHIP coverage for our children. All of these investments in Texas healthcare will reduce racial disparities, improve public health, and better secure the fundamental right to health care for more Texans. Significant improvements for Texas families as we build back better, seeking to recover from the 4 disastrous years of Donald Trump and nearly 3 decades of sorry Republican state leadership. Now it's time for the Senate to get busy and pass this legislation so President Biden can sign it into law this year and we can really begin to make a difference in the lives of so many Texans. Thank you.
You heard Senator Klobuchar on the Build Back Better plan. She believes the Democrats are going to get it done this month. I know you voted for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, but you're against the Build Back Better plan. You say it's going to fuel inflation. The administration has put forward 17 Nobel Prize-winning economists who say it won't.
So those 17 Nobel Prize, if you go back, Glenn Kessler in the Washington Post looked at them. They said that was the bill they had then, not the bill they have now. And they point out that if you are going to avoid inflation, then you've got to be able to pay for it. The Wharton School of Business has a better analysis. Their analysis is that it's about $1.53 billion in new revenue. But as it's probably going to be implemented, those things that don't sunset or that are supposed to sunset don't, it's going to cost $4.65 trillion. $4.65 trillion on top of what the federal government is going to pay. And may I make a note, George? 1/3 of the expenditures are tax cuts for billionaires. There's corporate welfare. It's going to raise the price of gasoline at least about 20 cents a gallon. And it begins to have federal dictates as to how your child's preschool is handled, the curriculum even. What's not to like? It's a bad bill.
So we're sitting here in Liberty Square in Baltimore. You just announced a big project as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Why here, and what's the significance?
Well, several things made this one of the projects that made the cut for this year's round of RAISE grants, a program we're going to be able to fund a lot more of thanks to this new law. We were looking for projects that bring together a lot of our top priorities. That includes safety, it includes economic opportunity, it includes equity and climate, and a great transit vision can do all of that. You know, Baltimore's an area where there has been a long-standing need for east-west connection, and where sometimes in the past transportation decisions actually cut people off from opportunity. So what they're going to do, adding bus lanes, creating safer and expanded transit, will help more people access services, access jobs, access schools, and I think sets this city on a more equitable path, which is part of why I think that local vision was so compelling.
And let's talk more specifically about this east-west connection. Here in Baltimore, there's the so-called highway to nowhere, which exemplifies a lot of what you're trying to accomplish with the bipartisan infrastructure law. Talk about why the highway to nowhere is example number one for why this is so important.
So a good infrastructure project connects people, and it connects people to each other as well as to opportunities. But sometimes infrastructure can do the reverse. The Highway to Nowhere is an example of a stretch of road that was built. It's only about 1.5 miles, but the way it was put in demolished so many homes and really helped to wreck a neighborhood. And we're trying to make sure that as we look forward, we're doing the reverse. We're connecting, not dividing, improving, not harming. As you might expect, and as we see in so many places around the country, is disproportionately black residents who were displaced by that investment. And it turned out it didn't even serve transportation needs very well. So I bring this up not to wallow in it, not to make people feel bad about mistakes in the past, but because now we have a chance to do something about it. And that's something that we're going to be looking for among the criteria for programs in the future. How do they make something better where maybe in the past federal dollars sometimes made something worse?
What do you say to those critics, and usually conservative critics, who say that your focus on equity in this way, or just to be perfectly blunt, focusing in on the role race has played in transportation decisions, in infrastructure decisions? What do you say to them who say, oh, you're making the wrong argument, or you have no argument?
Look, what we're doing is we are reconnecting people who may have been disconnected or divided by discriminatory decisions in the past. That helps everybody. I don't know why anybody would be against reconnecting people who have been divided by discriminatory decisions in the past. And again, the point is not to make America feel guilty. The point is to make America better and more equitable and more effective in moving people to where they need to go. The point of transportation is to connect. So if transportation was ever used to divide, we have a responsibility, a moral one, but also a very practical one, to fix it. You know, the mayor was describing when he was a kid in Baltimore, it taking 2 hours to get to school. A 2-hour commute. That's longer than it takes to get to Baltimore from my home in Washington, D.C. We can do better, especially for people who don't have cars, who are disproportionately residents of color. This is something that makes whole communities better off, and it hurts no one to tell the truth and do something about it.
What's the economic argument for this? You make the transportation argument, but isn't there an economic argument also?
Absolutely. There's 180,000 jobs just along the stretch that we're funding right here with the support for bus lanes. Connecting people to those jobs makes for a stronger economy. It brings opportunity into neighborhoods that haven't always had access, literally haven't had access, in terms of folks getting to where those job opportunities really are. And we see this again played out across the country, where it is quicker to get to a city from a whole different state if you do have a car than to get across town if you don't have a car. Fixing that connects more people up to the job opportunities that help them build wealth and establish a stable family life with all of the social as well as financial benefits that brings for family upon family in some of the underserved areas across our communities and across our country.
I know it's now the bipartisan infrastructure law. Now there's talk about the Build Back Better Act, which is